The SOS that shakes the stars. The silence of deep space was broken by a desperate signal. A small, flickering distress beacon pulsed against the vast emptiness, its weak signal stretching across the void, calling for help. Aboard the Excelarian ship Veyrol, Captain Iskar clutched the edge of his control panel. His silver-blue skin shimmered under the dim emergency lights. Sparks rained from a broken console, and the hum of failing power systems filled the air. The ship was dying. Their engines were destroyed. Their shields were gone. The oxygen levels were dropping. And worst of all, they were alone. Any response? Iskar's voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. His communication officer, Tali, shook her head. No one is answering, Captain. We've been sending distress signals for hours. Iskar clenched his fists. The nearest Solarian fleet was too far away. Even if they received the message, they wouldn't reach them in time. Their only hope now was a miracle. And miracles were rare in the cold expanse of space. A human's boredom ends. Light years away, in the heart of Terran space, Commander Jack Carter leaned back in his cockpit, feet resting on the control panel. His fighter, the Valkyrie, floated lazily above a large space station. It was supposed to be a quiet day. No battles, no emergencies, just routine patrols. Jack hated quiet days. The Terran Defense Force had stationed him here after his last mission. Some nonsense about resting and avoiding unnecessary risks. Boring. Jack was Earth's best fighter pilot. He didn't belong on patrol duty. He belonged in the action. Then his console beeped. An alien SOS signal flashed across his screen. Jack sat up. An unknown ship. A distress call. No other responses. He frowned, tapping the controls. Central Command. This is Carter. I'm picking up an emergency transmission. Any nearby units responding? A static-filled response came through. Negative. Carter. No assets in range. Jack raised an eyebrow. No one. Confirmed. Too far. Too risky. Jack glanced at the transmission details. The stranded ship was located near the Krelian Nebula, a dangerous zone filled with unpredictable gravitational shifts. Most pilots would call it a death trap. Jack grinned. Copy that, Command. I'll check it out. Negative. Carter. Hold position. Jack cut the transmission. If no one else was going, he would. The decision to disobey. Jack's fingers danced across the controls. Engines roared to life. Thrusters engage. The Valkyrie spun out of orbit, heading toward the SOS signal. Technically, this was disobeying orders, but Jack had never been good at following rules. A crew was stranded, and he wasn't the kind of man who ignored a call for help. As the Valkyrie jumped into FTL, Jack cracked his knuckles and smirked. Boring day. Over. The race against time. Jack Carter's fighter, the Valkyrie, shot through hyperspace, a silver streak slicing across the void. Inside the cockpit, his fingers danced over the controls, adjusting course. The distress signal flickered on his screen, weak and irregular, like a dying heartbeat. He had seen enough battlefield transmissions to know what that meant. Time was running out. Jack leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Hold on, whoever you are. I'm coming. A ship on the brink of death. Aboard the Excelarian vessel Veyrol, Captain Iskar's heart pounded. He could feel the ship breaking apart beneath his feet. The engines were dead. The gravity stabilizers were failing. His crew, only 27 souls left, moved frantically, trying to keep systems from collapsing entirely. Tali turned from her console, her dark eyes filled with dread. Captain, the nebula's pull is getting stronger. Iskar didn't need the reminder. The Krelian Nebula wasn't just dangerous. It was a graveyard, a swirling mass of unstable energy, shifting gravity wells, and radiation storms. If their ship drifted any closer, not even wreckage would remain. His claws tightened against the metal of his chair. Has anyone responded? Tali's voice was barely a whisper. No one. Silence. A heavy, final kind of silence. Then, BEE. Tali's eyes widened. She turned back to her console, fingers flying across the screen. Wait, there's something. A single Terran fighter just dropped out of hyperspace. Iskar's breath caught. A fighter. Not a battleship, not a fleet. Just one ship. The lone pilot arrives. Jack's ship burst into normal space, engines flaring against the backdrop of the massive, swirling nebula. He scanned the area, quickly finding the crippled Xilarian vessel. The ship was in worse shape than he expected. Half the hull was scorched, one wing was completely missing, and its energy levels were critically low. Jack frowned. Damn, that's bad. Then his scanners picked up something else. Not just a distress signal. Movement. Jack's gut tightened. He tapped his console, running a deeper scan. The screen flickered, then displayed the worst possible news. Enemy ships. 3 vessels, circling the wounded Xilarian ship like vultures over a dying animal. Jack zoomed in, identifying the markings. Scarvok raiders. Jack exhaled slowly. Scarvok were brutal. No prisoners. No survivors. The Xilarians didn't just have a failing ship. They had hunters closing in for the kill. A new mission. Attack or stealth. Jack tapped his console, opening a secure frequency. Xilarian vessel Veyral. This is Commander Jack Carter, Terran Defense Force. I picked up your distress call. Static. Then a weak, crackling response. This is Captain Iskar of the Veyral. Terran, you should leave. There are Scarvok ships here. We are doomed. Jack smirked. Yeah. See, I don't do doomed. Iskar's voice wavered. You are one fighter. They are 3 warships. Jack leaned back in his seat, cracking his neck. Sounds fair. He checked his weapons, fully loaded. Engines, primed and ready. Jack had a choice. Go in stealthy, assess the situation, and maybe sneak the Xilarians out. Hit them hard and fast. Take out the Scarvok before they even knew what hit them. Jack smiled. Let's make some noise. With a flick of his wrist, the Valkyrie roared forward, weapons charging. The hunt was on. The enemy in the dark. Jack Carter didn't hesitate. Hesitation got people killed. His fighter, the Valkyrie, shot forward, a silver blur slicing through the black void. The 3 Scarvok warships loomed ahead, their jagged, insect-like hulls glowing with pulsing red energy. Predators, built for destruction. They hadn't noticed him yet. Good. Jack had seconds to make a choice. Stealth or shock. He smirked. Shock. His thumb hovered over the missile release. His mind calculated the angles, the enemy formations, the perfect opening move. Then his scanners beeped. Jack's smirk vanished. There weren't 3 enemy ships. There were 4. An invisible threat. A 4th Scarvok hunter ship sat in the darkness, silent, its energy signature nearly invisible. A trap. Waiting. Watching. And Jack had nearly walked right into it. He let out a low whistle. Clever bastards. This wasn't a random pirate crew. This was a killed squad. That meant one thing. The Xilarian ship had something the Scarvok really wanted. And Jack was now in the middle of it. A split-second gamble. Jack's fingers tightened around the controls. A normal pilot would retreat. Jack wasn't a normal pilot. He slammed the thrusters. The Valkyrie went from stealth mode to full-speed aggression in a heartbeat. Missiles locked. 2 launched. The nearest Scarvok ship never saw it coming. The first missile shattered its shields. The second ripped its engines apart. Boom! Flaming wreckage spiraled into the void. The trap was sprung. The other Scarvok ships turned, their weapons glowing red, locking onto Jack. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and had just pissed off 3 warships. Jack grinned. Now we're having fun. The deadliest dogfight begins. Lasers screamed past Jack's cockpit. He jerked the Valkyrie into a violent roll. barely dodging the onslaught. One hit, and he'd be dust. He flipped the ship into an aggressive dive, pulling toward the massive bulk of the Veyral, using it as cover. The Xelarians watched in stunned silence. Tali, the comms officer, gasped. "He's insane." Captain Isker muttered, "Or a genius." The Scarvok chased Jack, following him close. Too close. Exactly what he wanted. Jack cut his engines hard. His ship jerked to a dead stop, but the Scarvok couldn't react fast enough. They overshot him, their formation breaking apart. That's when Jack struck. His cannons lit up the void. The second Scarvok ship erupted into flames. 2 down. 2 left. A disturbing discovery. As Jack twisted out of range, his sensors pinged again. Something wasn't right. His ship's eye, Callie, chirped. "Commander, scanning Scarvok transmission signals. Decoding." Jack frowned. "What are they saying?" A moment later, the screen translated the intercepted message. It wasn't about him. The Scarvok weren't here for the Xelarians. They were here for what was inside their ship. Jack's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a heist. The Scarvok wanted something dangerous, something powerful. And if Jack didn't stop them, it could mean war. The lone warrior strikes. Jack Carter's heart pounded as his cockpit screen flashed red. Enemy lock-on detected. The remaining 2 Scarvok warships had recovered from their broken formation and were now hunting him like a pack of starving wolves. Jack didn't blame them. He'd already taken out half of their fleet. But they were about to learn something terrifying. He was just getting started. A pilot with no equal. Inside the Veyral, Captain Iskar, and his crew watched in stunned silence. Tali gripped the edge of her console, whispering, "That human. He's fighting them alone." One Solarian officer shook his head in disbelief. "A single fighter can't win against warships." Iskar didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the battle outside. Jack Carter wasn't just a fighter pilot. He was a force of nature, dodging death at impossible speed. The Scarvok ships fired, a brutal wave of plasma bolts streaking toward Jack's ship. Most pilots would try to weave through the fire. Jack did something crazier. He charged straight at them. Tali gasped. "He's suicidal." But Jack wasn't suicidal. He was smarter. At the last possible second, he rolled right, skimming just inches above the plasma blasts. His ship shields flared, overloaded, but held. Now he was inside their blind spot. Jack flipped the Valkyrie upside down, his cannons already locked on target. His thumbs squeezed the triggers. 1 kill, 1 trick, 1 madman. Jack's cannons sliced through the Scarvok ship's rear engines. Boom! A massive explosion ripped the warship in half. Debris spun into space. Jack's AI, Callie, pinged an alert. Warning. Enemy warship wreckage creating a gravitational hazard. Immediate evasive action required. Jack's eyes flicked to his scanners. The debris field was unstable. Any wrong move, and he'd be shredded into 1,000 tiny pieces. But Jack Carter wasn't normal. He saw an opportunity. He gunned the engines, diving into the wreckage at full speed. Metal fragments the size of buildings tumbled around him. Plasma fires rage. Jack twisted and weaved, narrowly dodging spinning chunks of the destroyed warship. The last remaining Scarvok ship followed him in. A fatal mistake. The death trap. Jack had one chance to end this. The Scarvok ship was bigger, slower, and not as maneuverable as the Valkyrie. It struggled to keep up as Jack led it deeper into the floating metal graveyard. Inside their warship, the Scarvok commander snarled. This human was a coward, running and hiding. But Jack Carter wasn't hiding. He was baiting. At the perfect moment, he cut the Valkyrie's engines, letting his ship drift. The Scarvok ship roared forward at full speed, straight into a massive, spinning wreckage plate. Tirash. The warship smashed into the debris, its hull cracking like glass. A chain reaction of explosions erupted across his body. Inside the Varol, Captain Iskar and his crew watched in shock as the final Skarvok warship disintegrated. Jack hadn't just won. He had humiliated them. The aftermath. And a dark revelation. Jack pulled up sharply, escaping the explosion just in time. His hands finally relaxed on the controls. He opened his comms. "Varol, this is Carter. I've cleaned up your little Skarvok problem." For a moment, there was silence. Then Tali's voice came through, shaking. That was the most reckless thing I've ever seen." Jack smirked. "Yeah, well, it worked." Iskar finally spoke. "Human, why did you come?" Jack leaned back. "Because no one else did." Iskar exhaled slowly. "Then we owe you our lives." Jack's scanners pinged. The wreckage was clearing, but his sensors were still detecting something. Something inside the Accelerian ship. The thing the Skarvok were after. Jack's grin faded. This rescue mission ain't over yet. The desperate gamble. The battlefield was silent. The last Skarvok warship had been reduced to burning debris, and the space around the Varol was now eerily empty. But Jack Carter's gut told him something was wrong. His scanner still detected something on board the Accelerian ship. Something big. And whatever it was, the Skarvok had been willing to send a kill squad to retrieve it. Jack opened comms. "Captain Iskar, I need to board your ship. Now." There was a pause. Then Iskar's voice came through, tense. "Why?" Jack stared at the readings flashing on his console. Energy signatures. Strange. Unstable. "Because I just risked my life saving you," Jack said, "and I have a bad feeling that whatever those Skarvok wanted, it's still on board." Silence. Then, the airlock doors on the Varol hissed open. Jack piloted the Valkyrie into the docking bay, landing smoothly before stepping onto the Accelerian ship. The moment his boots touched the deck, he knew something was off. The air felt heavy. Charged, like the calm before a storm. A secret buried in the cargo hold. Captain Iskar met Jack at the entrance, his silver-blue skin slick with sweat. The Accelerian's sharp eyes flicked between Jack and the smoke still trailing from his battered fighter. "You are either the bravest human I have ever met," Iskar muttered, "or the most reckless." Jack smirked. "Both. Now, what's in your cargo hold?" Iskar's jaw tightened. Nothing of interest. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Funny, because a whole fleet of Skarvok just died trying to steal it." Tali, standing nearby, exchanged a glance with her captain. "Sir, we should tell them." Iskar sighed. Then, without a word, he motioned for Jack to follow. They moved quickly through the dim corridors of the damaged ship, sparks flickering overhead. Jack's boots clanked against the floor as they descended into the lower levels. When they reached the reinforced doors of the cargo hold, Jack's hand instinctively went to his sidearm. The air was thick with static. Something was alive in there. The thing in the box. The doors slid open with a metallic groan. Inside the cargo hold, surrounded by damaged crates and shattered equipment, was a containment pod. Thick metal plating. Energy restraints glowing along its edges. Jack stepped forward cautiously. His scanner beeped wildly. "What the hell is this?" Iskar hesitated. "A weapon." Jack's fingers twitched. "A weapon? Against who?" The Accelerian captain swallowed. "Against you." Jack's blood turned to ice. Before he could react, the pod lurched violently. A deep, inhuman growl echoed through the cargo bay. The containment pod's surface cracked. Something inside was breaking free. The monster that shouldn't exist. Jack's instincts screamed at him to move, but he stood frozen, watching as the metal walls bent outward, as if being pushed from the inside. Then, boom. The containment pod shattered, sending shards of metal flying. A powerful shockwave threw Jack backward, slamming him into the wall. As his vision blurred, he saw it. A figure crouched in the wreckage. Tall, humanoid, but wrong. Its skin was black as the void, shifting and twisting like liquid shadows. Its eyes burned with an unnatural blue fire. Jack had fought aliens. He had fought monsters. But this was something else. Something not meant to exist. A mistake that could doom the galaxy. Tally gasped in horror. It's awake. We weren't supposed to wake it. Jack rolled to his feet, drawing his pistol. Someone want to tell me what the hell that thing is? Iskar's voice was barely a whisper. It was created by the Scarvok, but they lost control of it. Jack's mind raced. The Scarvok weren't trying to steal something. They were trying to destroy it. Because whatever this thing was, it wasn't a weapon of war. It was a weapon of extinction. The creature's glowing eyes locked onto Jack. Then it moved, faster than anything Jack had ever seen. Straight for him. The final escape. The creature moved. Not like anything Jack had ever seen before. Not like a warrior charging into battle. Not like a predator stalking prey. It blinked across the room, its liquid black form distorting reality around it, vanishing and reappearing in flickering bursts of speed. Jack barely had time to react. His instincts kicked in. He dropped to the floor just as a razor-sharp limb sliced through the air where his head had been. Sparks flew as the wall behind him was carved open like butter. A monster without weakness. Jack rolled, landing on one knee, pistol raised. His fingers squeezed the trigger. Bing! Bang! Bang! The shots hit their target dead center, but the creature didn't even flinch. The bullets vanished on impact, dissolving into the shifting mass of its body. Jack's jaw clenched. Well, that's just great. Tally screamed as the creature turned toward her. Jack's hand flew to his belt. EMP grenade. Last one. He didn't even hesitate. With a flick of his wrist, he launched the grenade toward the monster's feet. A pulse of blinding blue light exploded through the room. For the first time, the creature staggered. Its liquid form glitched, flickering like a broken hologram. Jack didn't wait for it to recover. Run. Now. Racing against the nightmare. Jack, Iskar, and Tally sprinted through the ship's corridors, the emergency lights flickering around them. Behind them, the creature shrieked, a sound that wasn't just noise but pressure, slamming against their skulls like a wave of static. Tally stumbled, gripping her head. It's inside my mind. Jack grabbed her by the arm, yanking her forward. Not today, sweetheart. The ship groaned. They were running out of time. The Scarvok had disabled the ship's engines before Jack arrived. If they didn't get off the Vayrol now, they'd be trapped with whatever that thing was. The impossible choice. They burst into the docking bay, where the Valkyrie sat waiting. Jack raced toward his fighter, but Iskar stopped. Jack turned. What are you doing? Move. Iskar's face was grim. If we let that creature escape, Iskar said, it will kill everything it touches. Jack knew he was right. This wasn't just about survival anymore. If that thing reached a populated world, it would be unstoppable. Jack cursed under his breath. His hand hovered over his wrist console, a remote detonation function. The Vayrol had a core overload fail-safe, one Jack could trigger from here. Blow the ship, blow the creature. But if he did that, the Exilarian crew wouldn't make it. Jack had made a career out of impossible choices. This was the worst one yet. The creature's inhuman scream filled the bay. They were out of time. Jack made his choice. He slammed his fist onto his console. The great escape. Alarms blared. The Vayrol's core began meltdown procedures. Jack grabbed Iskar by the collar and shoved him toward the Valkyrie. Go, go, go. The moment they were inside, Jack sealed the hatch and launched the engines. The fighter blasted out of the docking bay, tearing through the wreckage field at breakneck speed. Behind them, the Vayrol began to shake, its hull cracking apart. The creature rushed into the hangar, its glowing eyes locked on them. It leaped, just as the ship detonated. A blinding white explosion erupted behind them, the shockwave slamming into the Valkyrie, sending it spinning. For a moment, Jack fought the controls, his vision swimming. Then, silence. The Veyrol was gone, and the monster with it. Survivors, but at what cost? Inside the Valkyrie's cockpit, no one spoke. Jack exhaled slowly, staring at the empty void where the ship had been. Iskar sat motionless, his face unreadable. Tali wiped a shaking hand over her eyes. It's over. Jack wanted to believe that, but his gut told him otherwise. Because just before the explosion hit, he swore he saw something. A shadow, slipping through space, twisting, warping, escaping. Jack's grip tightened around the controls. It wasn't over. Not yet. Victory, and the legend grows. Jack Carter had seen a lot in his life. He had flown through the heart of a dying star, dodged pirate ambushes, and even outmaneuvered an entire Skarvok war fleet. But what he had just witnessed, that was something else. His grip tightened around the flight controls of the Valkyrie, his knuckles white. The Veyrol was gone. The explosion had wiped out the ship, the monster, and everything inside. Or at least, that's what should have happened. Jack couldn't shake the feeling. That thing, the shifting, liquid black nightmare, had been more than just a creature. It was something worse, something alive in a way nothing should be. And he swore, in the instant before the blast, it had slipped away into the dark, a silent return to the living. The Valkyrie glided through space, heading toward the nearest Terran outpost. The ship's eye, Callie, ran a diagnostic. Hull integrity stable, weapon reserves depleted, fuel at 17%. Jack let out a breath, rubbing his forehead. Remind me to never do that again. Tali gave a hollow laugh. She was still trembling. I don't think I'll be sleeping for a few cycles. Iskar sat in silence, his silver-blue skin pale. He had lost his ship, his crew, everything. Jack glanced at him, but didn't say anything. There weren't words for this kind of loss. The only thing worse than losing everything. Knowing you never even understood what you were up against. The debriefing. A story no one would believe. Hours later, the Valkyrie docked at Terran Command, a massive battle station orbiting a barren moon. As soon as they landed, Jack and the Xelarians were escorted into a secure war room. High-ranking officers sat around a table, their faces hard, skeptical. Jack leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. So, are you gonna debrief me, or should I start making up a more entertaining version? General Hayes, an older woman with icy blue eyes, sighed. Carter, we received your report. She tapped her screen. His flight log. The mission details. The battle with the Skarvok. The destruction of the Veyrol. Jack knew what was coming. We reviewed the final footage, Hayes said. We saw the entity. She narrowed her eyes. But we have no evidence it survived. Jack clenched his jaw. It survived. Another officer scoffed. Commander, you destroyed the ship. That thing was inside. It's gone. Jack didn't blink. You ever seen something that looked like it could die? The room was silent. Finally, Hayes leaned forward. What do you propose? Jack exhaled. We need to track it. If it survived, it won't stop. It won't rest. And if the Skarvok were afraid of it, he leaned in. Then we should be too. The general studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. The beginning of a new hunt. That night, Jack sat alone in the Valkyrie's cockpit, staring at the endless expanse of stars. Somewhere out there, that thing was moving. Maybe it was hiding. Maybe it was hunting. But one thing was certain. It wasn't done. Jack tapped the controls, bringing up star charts, scanning for anything unusual. Then finally, he smirked. All right, you shadowy bastard, he muttered. Let's see what you've got. With a roar of engines, the Valkyrie shot forward into the unknown. The hunt had begun. The end. For now.